Hey folks, this is me, Vishwas Nair. I'm the host of this podcast. And a lot of times, we think what is an impact that a teacher can do in the world of tech? It is everything. So I think Yas is one person who can really demystify that process and give us that quick understanding about what is the need of the hour when we are trying to do and achieve more while educating folks in the world of tech. I think it's a great honor to have him on my show. And also, let's get the things right because it's probably not too much of a tech that we might be talking here. It's like it's completely filled with tech, of course, but it's not to a perspective that to give you what is the world of technology all about. You can just go and see sessions out there, can understand. But more towards the understanding of the culture. That's what my questions will be all towards. And it's a grateful. I'm very grateful that Yas is on my show, and also we are able to get so many things out there from his point of view and understand some industry insight. Thank you so much, Yas, for being on the show. Means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Yas. I'm a technical trainer for Azure within Microsoft based in Melbourne, Australia. And yeah, we'll be going through some topics today, which are sort of technical, but not completely around technical aspects. So we're talking about more high level overview of what's going on at the moment. And if you want to get into tech, what should you do? If you're already in tech and want to improve, what should you do in then? And some other topics as well. So happy to be here.
Sure, yes. I want to know what was your journey as a student and as a professional, because these two journey, I think probably if we define it, I always say this, first 5 years of your journey is very important. Keep it very, very energetic and things like that. So what was your journey as a student and as a professional? How has it impacted in your life?
Yeah, well, it is sort of a different journey for me personally. There might be people out there who have to go through the same, but there might be people out there who will face a different experience than I was when I was a student. So I had to work at the same time that I was studying for various reasons. Obviously, it was mostly financial, but I also wanted to get involved in the industry way before I graduated. So I would basically, back then I would design websites or create, for example, some templates and sell those templates to people who want to follow up and create their own websites. And that's how I got into sort of like programming from early on. And this is probably about maybe 20 years ago that I'm talking about. So very, very back then. So when I was a student, the languages that were taught at uni were not really usable in the industry. So they were using, for example, like C++, Pascal, and those sort of languages were mostly used for low-level programming or for when you wanted to have like a non-web sort of application. And I didn't want to go down that path. I wanted to get involved in web because it was like a big boom. Everybody was talking about creating web applications on websites. And that's why I decided to go against what I was studying, or not against, mainly in the opposite direction, and learn languages like ASP. And we started with ASP, then ASP Classic came on, and then ASP.NET, and sort of transformed from there. And then with the obviously introduction of single page web applications, everything changed drastically. So, but back then when I was a student, I knew that the market required different sort of skills. So I sort of had my energy focused on those areas, not necessarily related to what I was studying. Obviously, the concepts, yes, that is best place to learn the concepts of operating system, programming, software development lifecycle, all sort of different stuff was the core concepts that you definitely will learn. But the languages, their syntax, their abilities, what can you create? That was something that I really didn't learn at uni.
Yeah, I wanted to get to know this understanding of what was your journey as a cloud professional, because a lot of times, when this journey starts, the first thing that we do is like probably complicating the things that we learn, right? So We want to do this, we want to do that, but there is actually one point where you realize, okay, let's just go in a flow. So what was your journey as a cloud professional? How did the industry grow to what we are seeing today? Because a lot of times, what I saw in industry like coming 5 years before is something different than what I see today. What is getting evangelized is also something different today. So what was that factor that really brought that evolution in this industry all about?
So my cloud journey particularly started probably about 9, 10 years ago when I was working in a consultancy. So if you remember back then, we had racks and servers and network cables, and it was like a mess. Every organization had their own things, and whenever you wanted to access them, you had to be physically in place, and sometimes you had to go through VPNs, and it was a lot of trouble to get access to those servers and try to work. Deployment was like a nightmare. Every time you wanted to deploy into those servers, it was like a lot of trouble. And if you messed up something, it would take a lot of time to recover from it, especially if there was like something that required some sort of a, for example, recovery from a physical or hardware perspective, and also the software. So it wasn't like you deploy an application and you wanted to deploy a previous version. You had to take down the whole server, make sure nobody was like getting into the server, and then you update it.
Hosting the server.
Yeah, it was like all on the server, production server, and everybody was scared to touch that server anyway. It was a lot of responsibility. People were like really afraid to go in, and there were a lot of messing up. People deleted production databases or applications, and yeah, it was not fun. So when cloud providers started to offer those services and say, hey, you know what, let us worry about those physical and hardware access. You just focus on managing your applications and whatnot. So it was really an interesting area, because it wasn't about the transformation per se. It was mostly about cost for companies back then. Because if they wanted to manage a physical server and all the other network infrastructure, they had to pay a lot of money, not just for purchasing those, but also for their maintenance. And so when the cloud providers started to offer those services, it was way cheaper. So companies started to move towards that area super, super fast. And that sort of fast transition without preparation caused a lot of trouble as well, because companies started to move towards cloud, but they had the old on-premises mindset. So they weren't coming to leverage the existing benefits of cloud. They were just coming to pay less. And so they sort of reinvented a lot of wheels. They started to think traditionally, and yeah, there was a lot of interesting challenges back then. And as a consultant, I had to work with various different customers and help them to understand, hey, now that you're moving to cloud providers, why don't you take advantage of this existing out-of-the-box feature? You don't need to go and reinvent it. Hey, this is what exists. So it was more around introduction of the existing cloud services to those customers, and have sort of that comparison between whatever they had and whatever the cloud providers had, so that they knew where to invest their energy to get their products up and running, right?
Yep. That's true, because a lot of times, when I see new organizations coming up with new technologies, like, technology is evolving every single day. It's never going to change. It's never going to change. Like, the basic principle of it is always to dump that entire infrastructure, but fancying it out, saying that, what, this is what we are doing. Yeah, that's what it is all about. But I wanted to understand, is DevOps a complex puzzle in that organization today? What do you feel about the way we are building the tech today? Because you explained something on containers on Azure, because containers on Azure has so much of complexity, right? It can be deployed on a web app. There's container apps today. There's so many things which are coming up today. So making a decision is also a very chaotic thing, right? I wanted that insight from you, because as we are growing in the technology, the complexities are getting reduced, but the decision making is getting a little worse, because a lot of times we have to deal with the legacy systems. A lot of times we have to move on with what should be the need of the hour and things like that. And also, can we also try talking about good architecture in terms of an cloud adoption framework and cloud architecture frameworks that we are just talking about, because a lot of these things are overlooked in the industry. So that's what I feel about it. So I want you to answer, is DevOps a complex piece of puzzle in an institution today?
I wouldn't say DevOps is a piece of puzzle. I would just say that for anybody out there who are already engaged in DevOps practices, or they want to get engaged and become active in the area, it is not technology. It is a mix of people and processes. So all you're doing when you're implementing DevOps practices is to make sure that your organization can move as fast as it needs to basically achieve its goals. So at the end of the day, everything is about the end user. So if your company is offering a product or service, you want to make sure that all the users are benefiting from that service. You want to make sure that you can compete within the market. That's also a really great reason why people and organizations are moving towards implementing DevOps practices, because it allows them to have those sort of fast feedback cycles, release timeframes, and also getting those features in front of the users as fast as they can, so they can compete with their competitors. So when we talk about DevOps, think of it as optimizing or introducing some processes that allow you or any organization to deploy fast. So if you have a look at the waterfall approaches that we used to have before, if you wanted to develop a new product or even working on a brownfield product, any release will probably take about maybe a couple of months. And you had to wait for a lot of things to happen before you could release your product to the market. And so in order to prevent that, people started to introduce DevOps practices so that they can deploy into their environments way faster than a couple of months, for example, monthly, sometimes even weekly or daily. So there are organizations right when we are speaking at the moment that are deploying their products without any fear into their production environment on a daily basis. And that has caused them to gain a lot of end users, steal the market, and be the vanguards in terms of offering new features to the customers as fast as possible. So think of DevOps as a series of processes improvements or introduction of new processes for having the ability to be agile, to have the agility to adjust your business goals with the goals of the organization overall, because sometimes we forget that the IT department is not a separate or isolated department within the organization. The IT department exists so that we can help the organization to move towards its goals. And that's the main reason why people usually go into this sort of silos for themselves and try to implement some processes that really doesn't help, and it causes more friction. It causes more misalignments between different teams. And in terms of the cloud, if you have a look at the features that they're adding into their platforms, let's say Azure or AWS or Google, it really doesn't matter. If you have a look at those features that they're adding, they have a lot of customers. There's no doubt that these cloud providers have millions of customers. And if you think of it on a daily basis, if they learn like 1 point from each of these customers, they could then put all of these points together and say, hey, these are the best practices that we've seen working with our customers. And that's why these frameworks comes into place. But the cloud adoption frameworks, where we have gathered a lot of insights from what we've been through and our customers have been through, and we've sort of summarized it into a framework so that other people can have a look and say, hey, this organization went wrong here. Let's not repeat that. Let's focus on getting our, for example, products into the market faster by doing this, or by following these practices where it's helped other organizations similar to us to be able to be successful. So these frameworks and both the cloud adoption, the cloud architecture. These are all some of the real world scenarios where Microsoft have been involved with our customers to be able to implement those scenarios and prove that they really are making the companies more successful. And that's why people should really pay attention to those and benefit from them wherever they can.
That's true. That's true, because a lot of times organizations need to evolve, and also they need to learn where is the need of the hour. So my next question is all about the best way to educate professionals today, because you're a Microsoft technical trainer now, because you always teach a lot of developers and the customers out there. So my question was always towards how can institution like Microsoft and a team which they have built, the developer advocacy, my MTPs, MVPs, MCPs, they are part of the Microsoft infrastructure. So I want you to address the fact that how can we actually educate a developer today, and how can we get the best practices out from all the institutions that we are talking about, because it's the impact that we are just waiting for from the technical trainers like you, MVPs, MCPs, you name it, they're always there for us. So what is that one way, the right way to educate a professional today in terms of the developers, in terms of the DevOps engineers and things like that? And also, how are these institutions actually pioneering that way in order to educate them the right way?
So I would break that down. We can't say this is the best way to educate developers. There's no single best way. There's no single, this is, if you do this, you will be successful in this market. We have to, and we've done that through the ESR program with the Microsoft Worldwide Learning Team. We realized that people learn differently. People come from various different cultures, various different backgrounds. Some people learn by doing actual things, by implementing. Some people learn by reading a book. Some people learn by watching a video. Some people learn by going into a classroom environment. So because of that, you will see these different teams formulated so that we can sort of address all those different types of needs. For example, if somebody is really keen to read and they could just follow, and they already are self-taught and they know how to read and use the free materials that is available on the internet to be able to be successful and progress, there are heaps of stuff available for them, not just for Microsoft, from other vendors as well. But for Microsoft documentation has been evolving drastically since we open sourced it and put it on GitHub. And if you think of the evolution, if you remember the MSD and DVDs or CDs back then, where you had like 7 or 8 packs of CDs and everything, like the documentation for Visual Studio or all the different products were those on those CDs, it was really hard to navigate. You couldn't give feedback from those to the product teams and ask for a correction or adding a new piece of information in there. But now people can go and raise a pull request and add a piece of information themselves if they see fit. So Microsoft Learn, Microsoft Documentation are great ways for people to go and access free material. And as of right now that they're speaking, there are more than, I think, a few thousand modules free available on Microsoft Learn. And you also have sandbox environments alongside those modules where you get access to Azure environments for free without even having a subscription. So really great way for people who learn by themselves and they don't need a teacher or instructor to show them what needs to be done. For other people who learn visually, or they need to see a video, or they need to sit and watch somebody else do it and they learn, we have a lot of material there as well. Our Channel 9 Azure Friday videos, our YouTube channel for Microsoft Technical Trainers, and also for quite a wide variety of other teams who have YouTube channels. These are all available for people to just go and freely access all these information and learn from those type of materials. If they really need to sit in a classroom environment, we have all our certifications are basically having classes available for our customers. These are not available for everybody, so they need to be a customer of our ESI program. So that's Enterprise Skilling Initiative. And once the company joins that program, whether through a partner or whether through a different mean, they can get access to these classroom environments. So that's when I come into place. And for example, I teach them AZ-104 or AZ-204 or AZ-400. And these are different various topics that we have. And they could basically go and get the certification. And sometimes these certifications, or not sometimes, most of the time, these certifications will really help to push people in the market. This will help them to stand out from the crowd. And when somebody sees, for example, that I have the administrator certificate, they already know that I've invested time in there. It's not easy to get a certificate. It's not easy to go and establish your knowledge in the area. But why going through these sort of in-person or virtual classroom environments, we prepare them, we let them know what resources they have available. We give them access to dedicated labs and et cetera, so that they can learn from that aspect. And again, contribution to open source, DevRel teams are all over the place for guiding people on, hey, this is a product. What is the one thing that you're looking into? And they're not about advocating a product. They're mainly there to get the feedback from the users, from the developers who are the actual users of the product, and feed it back to the product team. So a lot of these teams, the core purpose, the whole reason why they've been invented and created is that we want to get feedback as fast as we can into the product team so that we develop the products, we improve them, in order for providing every necessary needs and means to get people on board and leveraging our products with ease and successfully.
Yeah, you've written a book on biceps, and there is always a new need of the R and the technology, right? If you just think about Microsoft infrastructure, it's like plethora of IAC, like PowerShell, Azure Biceps. You can enter through Terraform. You can also enter through ARM templates. Oh God, there are a lot. So I wanted to know, like, this is apart from the question. So it's all about the cloud misconfiguration which can happen, right? It's also today there is a chance that your cloud can be misconfigured. Your cloud can have rules that are not defined and things like that. So how can organization adapt to energize that effort more towards reducing the misconfiguration, reducing the secrets out on the repositories? Like it's been a long awaited talk, because DevSecOps to me is not something which is evangelized very recently. Probably it was there, but people started emphasizing it now. So how can an organization put their energy more towards making sure that these misconfigurations reduce in their organization? And also, how should an organization be ready to adapt for these kind of changes that is happening in their organization? Like IAC was not there. IAC came in all of a sudden. So how are these technologies going to improvise over a course of time?
I would say before doing anything, the organization needs to have the right culture. DevOps is all about the culture where everybody is on the same page as to what needs to be done to be able to deliver successfully. So if you don't have the culture, you need to spend a bit of a time enlightening your team members or introducing them to these practices and showing them the results of other companies or other competitors as to, hey, this is what this company did, and now look at how successful they are, et cetera, et cetera. So for DevOps to be helpful to any organization, they need to have the right mindset. They need to have the buy-ins from the developers, from the exec team, and that's how everybody gets aligned. So that's one of the main things that I always talk about to my students when we go through the DevOps course, that, hey, if you don't have the right mindset, even if you implement the best practices in place, you might not get the results that you're after. Because at the end of the day, the processes without people is nothing. You need to have the people to back up the processes so that you have success in your journey. And if the people are not using the tools or products that you introduce, it just makes it worse. If the people don't have the right skills, it just makes it slower. So it's not always about introducing something new or something shiny that is in the market everybody is looking for. It's not a resume-driven development sort of cycle. It is more towards, hey, this is what is making people successful. We need to invest time to prepare our teams so that we can then introduce these practices into our processes and be more successful.
So yeah, so let's just go a little off topic here because we are talking too much of cloud, but like I want your perspectives towards the AI market space, which is there. Because when I think of an AI market space, it's more likely moving more towards cloud, which is also about the quickest way in adopting this technology. But I want your insights on how can AI be a superpower be built today? And also you can also define an AI from your perspective because we are yet to build something which is strong enough to be called as a superpower. So how can cloud help in these kind of a technology? How are the techniques which were existing in the microservice serverless world help us in building such kind of an brain on a burning box, that's your cloud, CPUs, GPUs, and things like that. So what is your perspective towards the AI market that is being adopted through the cloud computing?
So think of, okay, so there are two aspects. There are people who have some background in AI or artificial intelligence, and there are people who, like me, don't have any background whatsoever. So I come from a software engineering background. I don't have any background in AI. I've read stuff here and there, but it hasn't helped me to be, really good at bringing something in life or creating a new model or whatnot. So I know the concepts, but I'm not good at implementing them because I don't know the languages or the processes behind the scene good enough to be able to do that. So what cloud providers have done is that they have the expertise, they have the right people, they have the right resources to create solutions that basically is making my job easier. So if you think of it as, I'm a developer, I want to leverage, for example, image recognition, but I don't know how to create a model, I don't know how to do stuff. I'll go into Azure and leverage a new service, which basically gives me that image recognition using an API. So I just call the API, pass it some data, get the result back. I'll just use the prediction phase of the AI ecosystem. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And if I learn which product within Azure offers various different services or what services they offer, I can then map those to solve my problems. I don't need to go and implement a new model. I can leverage the existing model that is offered by Azure to be able to create that sort of powerful product for my customers and my organization. And there are many, many different services within Azure, and we have a lot of videos on that if people are interested. This is like AI as a service. So we offer a lot of APIs where we have image recognition, I don't know, and we've got examples on Microsoft Learn website. We've got examples of people leveraging these to solve real problems. For example, there are some examples around farmers using our services to detect, for example, or predict when a particular, for example, pest is going to hit their farm, and they do some preventative actions to prevent being in a disaster scenario. Or, for example, saving lives in beaches. We have APIs, and people are using the APIs alongside with some other technologies like drones and for example, live cameras to sort of help to detect, for example, sharks, or detect when somebody is getting drowned or stuff like that. So there are real world scenarios where people are using the services that we offer, and they're creating amazing products. But they don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. They don't need to go and, for example, have a large collection of data sets to be able to train their model and then use the model and create the model. And yeah, it's basically making the job of a developer much easier to just focus on using a predefined service or model and then just leverage it within the solution to solve a real world problem.
So now we have low-code and no-code solutions which are coming up on the cloud, like Logic Apps is an integrated fast solution and things like that. But probably sometimes adapting it to it quicker, probably making sure that our product migrates to that thing, that entire feature out there, which is from a cloud service provider, or else any of the partnering cloud service provider, is also something which is actually a little chaotic, because there is a chance for us to misconfigure it, and there's a chance for us to lead to a new problem as well. So how should we adapt to something new in an organization? Because a lot of times probably we might think, okay, let's keep it a legacy system and things like that. So what is it all about when you're talking about a system evolution in an organization, when it comes to a project, when it comes to the form factor of it?
So if you think of any new technology, not just cloud, any new technology that comes in, usually comes in with documentation, with sample codes. And the main problem that I've seen within the teams is that they want to just do something and deliver it really quickly. So what they do is they copy paste code from Stack Overflow or from other solutions without actually realizing that that code is not the right fit for their purpose. So my recommendation is, whenever you are facing a new technology or a new solution, make sure you understand, first of all, spend some time to understand the concepts behind it, its features. Go through the documentation briefly to find out what is the main features of the product, and then try to read some codes that are available. So a lot of our Azure services, as you mentioned, Logic Apps, Azure Functions, durable functions, all of these, we have a ton of sample codes available for various scenarios. And if a developer spends a bit of a time to go through those sample codes and try to understand how it's done and why they've done it in that way, it basically helps them to implement their own solution without misconfiguration, without even sometimes misusing. So sometimes you realize you do a proof of concept, you implement something really small, and you realize that this is not really helping you at all. Like you shouldn't be using this product in the first place. So those little experimentation, the proof of concepts, MVPs, reading the documentation, and also there are many people who are willing to help you, developer advocates, MVPs, and MCTs. These people, their purpose and their goal is to help you as a developer to succeed. And if you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I've got this problem with my solution, they might be able to help you or point you at least to the right direction. So that is my recommendation against any new technology that comes in, regardless of whether it's on Azure or anywhere else. Documentation. That's the first point of reference. It is the single source of truth. And if you see something is missing from the documentation, give feedback to the product team, and they will definitely add that, or they will basically help you to find the relevant information you are seeking. And again, if you are trying to bring that technology into your solution, try to do it in a small scale, try to do a proof of concept, make sure that you understand the service and what it solves for you. And if it's a right technology, then go ahead and implement it in your own solutions.
Yeah, you can talk.
Yeah, and in terms of, you mentioned the transformation, IT transformation or cloud transformation in general is something that a lot of organizations have started. And it basically is, to me, that's my conception of this particular journey, is that it involves three different phases. You are either introducing a new process, a new service. So that's when you innovate, you go into this innovation mode, you bring something else to help you to implement something that you're working on and help you to succeed, help you to progress. Or sometimes it requires change. And we all know, for people, change is the killer. People don't usually are really resistant to change. They don't want to leave their well-known and basically they've gotten used to a particular process or a service, and they don't want to let it go. And if they are not embracing the change, then you'll face that culture problem that we talked about earlier, and the team will not be succeeding. The team will not be progressing because of that particular aspect. So you need to be able to educate. You need to let people, or give them time to upgrade themselves, to go and read something, to go and join a course, to go and, for example, invest time in learning, invest time in improvement. And this is why a lot of organizations today have dedicated professional development time for the developer team, for the DevOps team. And they say, hey, this week is yours. Go ahead and learn about this topic so that we can use it later in our solutions. And that's mainly where a lot of transformation will get results, because you are giving people the space and the resources that they require to be successful in a particular technology. And the last thing is, so you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not changing something, but you are requiring faster movements. So you're doing the exact same thing you were doing, but you need to do it faster. How do you do it? Using automation. So that's when a lot of automation comes into place. You have automation in terms of deployments, automation in terms of cloud provisioning, automation in terms of processes. And this automation is a key part of your DevOps journey. And DevOps, again, has a lot of aspects. And one of the main reasons that people go towards DevOps is they not only want to deploy their code, but they also want to deploy their environment, their cloud environment using code, which basically is referred to sometimes as infrastructure as code or IAC. And let me tell you what, when I was writing that book on Bicep a few months ago, it was a completely new product. So I had to go and learn and the best way for me to learn was to do it. So I spun up a lot of resources in Azure to be able to find out, hey, this bit of template does this, or this is how you do that. And if I didn't do it, then my readers wouldn't benefit, because if there was an error or if there was something went wrong with that deployment, they will basically feel frustrated because they weren't able to follow along with my book and with the progress. So definitely go and invest time in learning, invest time in accepting the change, invest time in helping your people to grow. And a lot of times, the best way to grow, even if the organizations are not really letting you having dedicated time for learning, you could still learn by peer reviews, by reviewing your pull requests, by doing XP programming, where you have multiple people working on the same problem, by comparing the code between different teams, sharing the code between different teams, and a whole bunch of different stuff that is available easily on the DevOps practices that are available in the market today. So I would highly recommend people to not think of cloud transformation or IT transformation as something that basically results in them losing their job. It is something that helps the organization, but also helps them to grow, helps them to become something bigger than before, become a more experienced and more senior developer or DevOps engineer or network or whatever engineer they are, and they will become more successful in general. So definitely go and check those out. And again, you can reach any of Microsoft MVPs, the developer advocacy team, the trainers, to get more information if you want to. And there are heaps of free resources available as well.
Sure. I think that really covered a lot of insights for the IT world. So thank you so much, Yas. Means a lot when such great insights are being shared for professionals like us. Most of it, the journey that has to starts with a change. It's a new change that you just enter. It's a new way that you are going to architect something new. So your DIY projects have a different way in which you are architecting, but your professional projects have a different way in architecting. So yeah, thank you so much, folks, for also being part of the show, because it means a lot when you guys come back and listen to us and just go on with a lot of things that we just wanted to learn from. And thank you, Yas, for being on the show. It means a lot.
Thanks for inviting me, and glad to be here.